Muchachos y muchachas, is it really so? The day of closing arguments for the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and 𝘥𝘞𝐫𝐜𝐡, this has gone by super duper fast. Just to give you perspective, this trial was allocated 6 weeks to transpire and was able to get through in about 2.5. And to me, just personally, that's just not dense enough for the crimes and aggregations of actions on the behalf of Jeffrey Epstein and allegedly Ghislaine Maxwell that have actually transpired over the decades. So for me, this is not dense enough. But nonetheless, this is where we are. And as I have committed to you to cover this from day one, this is where we are. And today, closing arguments are presented, and the jury has already entered into deliberation. Let's get to the details. Stay right there. We're going to go through it. Folks, the world is literally becoming unhinged. Supply chains are breaking down. The critical shortages are showing up left and right. People can sense that the other shoe is about to drop. They're ordering emergency food like crazy, which means you should too before you can't get any. I'm talking about high quality emergency food you can get from My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's leading preparedness company, and they've served millions of American families. Now they want to help you by giving you $100 off their best-selling 3-month emergency food kit. This food stays fresh for up to 25 years in proper storage, so it'll be there when you need it. And the meals in this food kit average over 2,000 calories per day, so don't wait. Go to preparewithnatly.com and claim your 3-month emergency food kit while you still can. You'll save $100 per kit if you act now. That's preparewithnatly.com. There continues to be a surge of orders. Make sure yours is one of them. preparewithnatly.com. All right, we're back. As I stated, you guys know my opinions, and if you need to catch up, I've made a playlist since day one. We have been covering this play by play, transcript by transcript. I've tried to dig up as much meat and potatoes to corroborate what is happening within the walls of this federal trial. So with that being said, we're crossing the finish line. They are presenting their closing arguments. Let's get to it. So we'll actually start with the recap here. So, Ghislaine Maxwell's trial is in its final chapter, and closing arguments are expected today. On Saturday, the government said that its summations could last 3 hours and the defense could go just as long. On Friday, we learned that Ghislaine Maxwell actually declined to take the stand. She will not be testifying, and her defense team only called a handful of witnesses. To me, this is spooky. Very spooky. The fact that the defense team either they only had a handful of witnesses or that's all they needed was a handful of witnesses. So let's get straight to it. Sophisticated predator. Prosecutors are giving their closing arguments now, reiterating allegations that Ghislaine Maxwell acted as Jeffrey Epstein's right hand. She was also a sophisticated predator who knew exactly what she was doing, Assistant U.S. Attorney Allison Moe told jurors. She ran the same playbook again and again, she added. She was a grown woman who preyed on vulnerable kids. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump straight to the transcripts because that's what we have. Closing arguments. Judge Nathan asked if the exhibits have been withheld throughout the trial have at least been put to the public docketing this morning. No, only on DOJ's USAFX password protected site and no defense exhibits in sight. Amid secrecy, lunchtime for jurors has been discussed. Judge Nathan says the government will go straight through, then an early lunch, the defense, then rebuttal, charge, and deliberations possibly beginning today. A comfort break somewhere in there. Judge Nathan also presides. Stay a few minutes away so Mr. Williams can reach you. If the jury has notes or a verdict, note, Intercity Press immediately filing opposition to withholding of the slides and all defense exhibits still not docketed. It's here. So that being said, that they seem to be very delayed or not releasing these pieces of evidence on purpose, but we don't know. But Intercity Press is on top of it, apparently. Judge Nathan presides. Anything else, the box is turned, the speaker box, so the public can't see. No problem without confidentiality, privacy of victims, survivors, but they are withholding all slides and demonstratives and defense exhibits. So already Matthew Russell Lee, who is with Inner City Press, who is the person who is making the transcripts, is very suspicious about the doings of the beginning of this, this day. Add note, SDNY Judge Rakoff, then when Inner City Press requested the U.S. versus Wiegand, ordered that all exhibits U.S. in defense be put on public website, not just USAFX. Inner City Press asked Judge Nathan to follow the president here. UN docketed. Continued on, while awaiting the entry of the jury and U.S. argument, noting that yesterday after the Inner City Press wrote to Judge Nathan, attorney USA Comey and two on the defense suddenly exhibits from much earlier in the case were put into USAFX, redacted, including Virginia Roberts school records. Now, why would they do that? They entered it into a password-protected website. It's strange. There's also Epstein Victims Compensation Fund general releases, one for Annie Farmer and another one with the name redacted, and a long video Inner City Press still belatedly downloading hide the ball until the last day, then put it up in the redacted form. Jury is entering the court. All rise. Ghislaine Maxwell is in a beige sweater today in the defense table with Bobby Sternheim in front row of gallery, Kevin Maxwell, and yes, Leah Staffian. Judge Nathan says, we'll break early for lunch, then we'll come back and hear Miss Menninger, who is the Maxwell defense attorney, then take another break. Rebuttal by the government and instructions for me. Miss Mo, Attorney USA Mo, says Ghislaine Maxwell was dangerous. She targeted a girl whose father had just died. That's Jane she's talking about. Attorney USA Mo continues, Maxwell run the same playbook again and again. She groomed them. She caused deep and lasting harm to the young girls. It is time to hold her accountable. You've heard the law enforcement officers, you've seen documents, phone messages, and a little black book with the victims' names. This summation is our opportunity to explain who all this evidence fits together. Maxwell is guilty. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 8 different reasons why she's guilty. First, Maxwell and Epstein were partners. They were in a romantic relationship. Maxwell wrote this document, not to show the public or press. Continued on, a couple for 11 years, great partners, rarely apart, best of friends. Does that sound like a personal assistant? No. When you're with someone for 11 years, you know what they like. Epstein liked young girls. Epstein could not have done this alone. A single middle-aged man inviting a girl to the ranch is creepy. That set off an alarm bells. Maxwell, as key, you saw photos, how close they were. Let's look at those. Not shown to press or public. You're looking at Maxwell and Epstein swimming naked in a pool. Not shown during closing and otherwise redacted or withheld. Where is she massaging Epstein's feet with her breasts? Look at this exhibit. Ghislaine Maxwell about lotions. Not shown to the press or public. Where's Juana Leslie's testimony about washing off dildos and returning them to a basket in Maxwell's bathroom? Let's turn to Annie. She was hoping to go to a good college. Kate, she was alone a lot. She was dazzled by this impressive woman who made her feel special. Jane has been sexually abused by family members. Her mother was an alcoholic. Maxwell was hanging out with these girls alone. Annie told you she got to New Mexico. She found herself along with Maxwell and Epstein. They were isolating these girls for a reason. By the way, isolation is a grooming tactic on the form of an abuser. So any trafficker or anybody who intends sexual abuse will do this to a victim. They paid for Jane's voice lessons and tuition. For Annie, it started with Maxwell telling her to rub Epstein's feet. For Jane, it was Maxwell topless by the pool and talking about boyfriends escalating sexualized massages on Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell touched 3 of the 4 accusers' breasts. Jane told you. Maxwell did it to Annie too. Annie wanted to get off the massage table. Maxwell touched these girls' bodies. It was not an accident. It happened again and again and again. Jane didn't become Epstein's so-called goddaughter by accident. Maxwell is guilty. Here's what they did to Jane. This is Jane. Photo not shown to press or public. You learned of years of sexual abuse. There are documents. Here's Jane's application to interlock in, not shown to the press or public. Here are the flight logs, not shown during the closing. Perpetrators' names redacted, along with victims, in short, belatedly provided. She saw Maxwell topless by the pool. You know that because you've seen Maxwell topless by the pool. Jane told you how Epstein walked her to the pool house and then started masturbating on her, etc. This is in, but flight logs redacted. You saw Jane's face, how hard it was for her to talk about this. She had to touch Epstein's pens. There were hands everywhere. There were horrifying group encounters with other women. It wasn't just in Florida, but also in New York, but private jet. There weren't any scholarship boys, no selection criteria behind being pretty young, vulnerable girl. Jane was 14, 15, and 16. He used vibrators on them. Here's the massage room in New York, not being shown to press or public. I see that there is a 1 hour Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, so this is where it's at here. Just a side note, they actually, the feds released this 1 hour raid video of Jeffrey Epstein's, search warrant executed at his Florida mansion. All right, so continued on. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything else, and I did. My bad. Continued on, Jane told Matt that she had a godfather, that she had to do things that hadn't wanted to do. And there was a woman who made her feel comfortable. Matt told you there was a woman in the house who made her feel comfortable. You know that's Maxwell. You heard expert testimony from Dr. 𝘱𝘭𝘠, who is an expert. She told you victims are less likely to tell the closer they are to the perpetrator. Maxwell was a big sister to Jane. Jane named 5 women who participated in group sex: Emmy, Kelly, Eva, Sophie, and Michelle. The defense tried to undermine Jane on Eva and Michelle, but Jane never gave the last name. The black book had another Eva and 3 Michelles. It was a slideshow. Annie told you that when Epstein touched her in the movie theater, he stopped when Maria was looking, who is her older sister. Annie then flew to New Mexico. Her mother thought it was about a scholarship. Maxwell started ratcheting up. Maxwell wanted to show Annie how to rub his feet. You saw the video of Maxwell massaging Epstein's feet with her breast. That was not part of the mentoring program. Maxwell was trying to normalize sex because she was a predator. Maxwell insisted on giving Annie a massage, then touched her breasts. It was not therapeutic. It was not on the list of spa treatments anywhere. Mulligan remembered that Annie told him that Maxwell had bought a pair of cowboy boots that touched her breasts during the massage in 2006. Annie told the FBI the same thing. Now let's talk about Carolyn. She was introduced by Virginia Roberts. This is the same girl that Juana Leslie remembered. Now at Mar-a-Lago, Maxwell told him to pull over and went to talk to her. Carolyn said Virginia told her how to make money giving a massage to wealthy man. Then Virginia and Epstein started having sex in front of her. This is the massage room, not shown to the press or public. This was not a place for a therapeutic massage. Here by the master bedroom is a drawing of a young girl pulling down her underwear. Maxwell understood what was happening at the case. This was the beginning of years of sexual abuse. Sometimes Sarah Kellen would call Carolyn. The phone messages corroborate Carolyn's testimony. Most cites Government Exhibit 608, which is not among those belatedly uploaded yesterday, also this one. So this is actually this picture that he's showing. These are note tabs that Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly would use to convey what seems to be a person or a sex victim or, someone that he ordered to, use your imagination. But they used to use order forms just like this, or message forms, rather. Continued on. Attorney USA Mo continues. All of the masseuses are female. Who needs this many masseuses? The notes say mom, dad. None of this was legitimate. Here's an employment record at Mar-a-Lago of Sky Roberts, Virginia's dad. Here's an entry. Melissa, Carolyn's friend. This proves what Maxwell is guilty. Continued on. In 2002, Epstein paid Maxwell $5 million. So it's a total of $30.7 million. Ask yourself, what was Maxwell doing for Epstein worth that? Epstein wanted to touch underage girls. Maxwell knew that the money was for. Virginia Roberts was 17 and flying on the jet with Epstein and Maxwell. Virginia brought Carolyn to the Palm Beach house when Carolyn was 14. It was a pyramid scheme of sex abuse. Now, I just want to also notate that this is not, outside of the trial, this is not the only place that has been alleged to use that type of term, the pyramid scheme of sex abuse. In Filthy Rich, for instance, the Netflix documentary, who I don't think is very fair because they should have allocated a lot more, to powerful people that were implicated in this whole saga. But nonetheless, the police department had an entire board made of what seemed to be a pyramid scheme where one would recruit the other, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to mention that. Attorney USA 𝘏𝘬𝘮𝘢 continues, the defense tried to tell you when Maxwell dated Ted Waite. She was no longer around Epstein. False. She was still the lady of the house. Look at this manual. There were no boys on Maxwell's list. She slept in a bedroom with a bathroom with lotions and another bathroom where the dildos were stored. And Epstein paid Maxwell millions of dollars. She knew. She was complicit. She's guilty. Let's talk about the charges. 6 counts. Court listener still does not have the jury charge, which is only docketed on Pacer this morning. Continued on. Beyond the law and venue, let me respond to what the defense has said in their opening. Maxwell's counsel said Maxwell is being blamed for something a man did, but she made her own choices. The case is about manipulating young girls, and the case was about money. Carolyn got a few $100s, Maxwell got $30 million. Attorney USA 𝘏𝘬𝘮𝘢 continues, this trial was also about memory. You heard about trauma. They argue Maxwell was too busy to commit these crimes, but Maxwell had personal assistants and a woman walk her dog. She ordered sand to be delivered to Epstein's private island. Their expert, Elizabeth Loftus, tried to convince people. They say Bugs Bunny at Disney World. She admits that she is an advocate for the defense. She made a lot of money. Does not mention Harvey Weinstein or Robert Dust. Why not? The prosecution team, in my opinion, a bit weak. And I don't know if that's by intention, but that's just my opinion. Continued on. The payments under Epstein Victims Compensation Fund are done. The witnesses have no financial stake in the outcome of this trial. They are corroborated by Juana Leslie, Mulligan, and the witnesses called Matt and Sean. There is only one conclusion, that Maxwell is guilty and that you should convict her. Use your common sense. You will reach the only verdict consistent with the evidence. Maxwell is guilty. Judge Nathan says, we're going to take a lunch break, and so they break. Attorney USA continues. We showed the listings of the list of masseuses of the numbers for mom and dad. Judge Nathan says, I deny the motion for mistrial. So the defense keeps arguing for mistrial against the invocation of grooming by proxy. All right. So we continue on the thread. So they continued on the thread. I'm just actually going to continue reading here. I'm not going to go to the recap because it's pretty much here. We don't really need a recap here. Let me actually do this. All right. All right. So now the defense closing by Laura Minninger, and now we go into Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys giving their defense. Maxwell's lawyer, Minninger, I am not here to defend Jeffrey Epstein. He is not my client. The U.S. presented evidence like a sensational tabloid. Private island photos, these were things that Epstein did, perhaps his crimes, but Ghislaine Maxwell is not Epstein. So let me reread that last line. I'm sorry that I butchered that. These were the things that Epstein did, perhaps his crimes, but Ghislaine Maxwell is not Epstein. Now, again, my argument for that is that, although that was in their opening argument, they're just trying to use her as a scapegoat. Epstein's not here to withstand trial, this and that. It was still very strange how they would argue. The defense would argue on the behalf as if they were arguing for Epstein. For instance, they would ask Eva Duman, did you ever see Jeffrey Epstein with underage girls? And her rebuttal was no. Same with Kimberly Espinoza, the assistant to Jeffrey Epstein, or executive assistant. Did you see him with underage girls? Her rebuttal was also no. So why is it that you're arguing for Epstein unless you would know that Epstein and Ghislaine go hand in hand? I'm just saying. Menninger continues. And Menninger actually has a point. She actually has a point here, and this goes to show the weakness of the prosecution team and why I think that this trial was so it was lacking the density that it needed. She continues, where are the 37,000 photographs? Who is in them? You don't know. They didn't bring you to these photos. There were folders and binders. They brought you the most innocuous photos of the couple that was once together. And that's, I would have to agree with the defense team. What is it about this prosecution team that they withheld out of tens of thousands of photos? They only brought up those romantic photos of Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein. What is that about? If they had 37,000 photos, wouldn't you think that there was more meat and potatoes there? Something they could use to illustrate that he was in fact with underage girls? That's also it's a concern of mine. Now they're using that as a defense, but it's actually it's not looking good for the prosecution team if there were thousands of photos that they didn't use. All right, continue on. I know I'm inserting commentary here, but let me continue. She continues. This is straight up sensationalism, Your Honor. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lack of evidence. Jane hired Robert Glassman 2 weeks before she spoke to the FBI in 2019. The lawyers like Boris Schiller helped set up the Epstein's Victims Fund. Then there's a manipulation piece. We'll go through the stories of each witness. The stories have changed. Carolyn had a lawyer in 2008 about a story about Epstein and Sarah Kellen, who she also sued without mentioning Ghislaine Maxwell. Menninger continues, where are your boots that you say it got bought for you? We had to ask those questions. The truth was manipulated over time. They've made Ghislaine Maxwell to be a Cruella de Vil and the Devil Wears Prada all rolled up into one. The pilot told you that Jane was fully growth? The pilot told you that Jane was fully grown. I'm just going to change that word for Matthew. Mature woman. Ghislaine didn't entice her to travel. The U.S. said that she was sometimes in a room when it happened, but Jane said she wasn't sure. Jane said that when she went to Epstein's house every week, but no one took the stand to say she spent time with Ghislaine. Who are these relatives? Annie's mom came. She said she never spoke to Maxwell. Larry, the pilot, said that Jane was fully mature. No pilot testified that they saw Carolyn, Kate, or Annie, the witness accusers. There was not a culture of silence. You just got the sound of silence. One got a two-time burglar with an axe to grind. They said you learned Ghislaine was in the room, but Jane can't remember, and there's no motive. They say a happy, educated woman in her 30s would end her career as a facilitator of sexual abuse, but where's the evidence? Epstein was a manipulator. Do you know Ghislaine's lifestyle before Epstein and after? Maybe it was Jeffrey, who needed Ghislaine and her connection and not the other way around. I want to talk about Jane's age. Her father died at 13. Tragic. But she's applying to go to an arts camp that cost $4,000 per person. They didn't even apply for financial aid. We see her travel records. This person who says she was indigent, she traveled to Italy. There's a flight to show you the slides withheld from the press and public that shows Jane flew earliest at 16. Well, yeah, I'm just going to enter my commentary here. The whole argument is that Epstein paid for her trips. Same, and Ghislaine was hand in hand. I'm just saying, I'm just reminding you guys. Jane got her dates wrong. In a case about dates and about travel, this homeless Jane traveling all over, she says she sang for Mike Wallace's 80th birthday, but she was 17 by then. She got it wrong. The government just said, we'll assume your first time to New York wasn't the Lion King data. Dr. Loftus said that it was unlikely. This is unremembering. She talked about group sexualized massages. You have a right to evidence. She gave names. None of these women called the police. They say Sophie, blonde, pretty, married a race car driver. She said Eva joined in with Sophie. She talks. I'm just correcting some of his, typos here. She talks about Emmy and Michelle. They now say it could be any old Michelle. Jane says it was Michelle who hung out with Emmy. Michelle said, I'm a housewife. This is a pattern of Jane picking names out of people she met in Epstein's world. Mendinger says she told you she met Donald Trump. She was never a time frame wrong. She's trying to insert Ghislaine into the story after the fact. Her lawyer, Glassman, told her it would help get money. She says that she was in a movie called Five Monkeys, but there is no movie called Five Monkeys. There is a movie called 12 Monkeys, and she claimed that hand-holding was sexual abuse. She went to New York mostly to see her sister. Ghislaine was nowhere to be found. There is no mention of Ghislaine Maxwell in Annie's diaries. Epstein was not in the room. She got the massage. She told the compensation fund that her breasts were groped. She got $1.5 million. That was the evidence of Ghislaine Maxwell knew. If we had Annie's journals, we might know, but we don't. So we don't. Maybe she just got it wrong by year, meaning she was 17 when she went there. She did get to go to Thailand. The records say she was 18 through Dusseldorf. Her mother was there. Now let's talk about the boots. She said that the government didn't ask for them in 2006. You'll have the boots with you back in the deliberation room. You'll see how worn they are. Where is the chef from the ranch? Where are her diaries? What you got is a photograph of the front and back of the diary and a few pages, but not the rest. Miss Farmer told you that she met Bowie Schiller when she was going to a witness in the Roberts case. Kate filled out a U visa application for exceptional people. She said she was exceptional. She's a music therapist. She says she's using a pseudonym because of her child, but she used her own name in court after Epstein's death. Kate claimed she met Ghislaine Maxwell in London when she was younger than 17, then said the house with the red door, look at it, across from Nag's Head pub. Slide withheld from the press and public. Let's talk about Carolyn. She says she saw a photograph of Ghislaine Maxwell pregnant, but no one else saw this. Money. For the first time Maxwell was accused of anything by Carolyn was during the compensation process. Let's talk about Sean, her ex-boyfriend, with his felony convictions. Carolyn tried to minimize her drug abuse, but Sean told you they were abusing marijuana, cocaine, ecstasy, and other drugs. They shared a phone calls from Kellen and Epstein. Let's talk about Dr. Rocio, the ultimate victim apologist. She's not trained to question accusers' accounts. There's no evidence Ghislaine Maxwell groomed anyone. Kate was dating a man Maxwell's age. Isn't that telling enough? The government was no basis to say that Ghislaine Maxwell wrote the document about her relationship with Epstein. Told in third person, there is no proof. And why didn't Virginia Roberts testify? If she could corroborate what Carolyn told you, don't you think she would have? Why would a proper Oxford-educated woman do this? Because she was Epstein's right-hand woman, I think. Maybe his romantic problem? I don't know. Larry the pilot said that sure, he signed a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. People don't talk about famous people flying on the plane like Bill Clinton and John Glenn. Epstein put his helicopter in the name of Air Ghislaine. That could correspond to the $7 million rich people do that. Epstein was generous. Epstein was generous. He was building a lodge at Interlaken that was handicapped accessible. So wait a minute. You're not defending Epstein, but you are kind of defending and attributing good attributes to Epstein. I'm just saying defense attorney to Maxwell. It's just weird. Certainly no one from JP Morgan told you that the money was for. Judge Nathan says, Miss Manager, we're going to take a real quick stretch break. So they stretch. Continued on. Defense attorney to Maxwell says, Mr. 𝘱�〗 was not doing a good job. Does being a tough boss make you an enforcer of a code of silence? He doesn't really authenticate the black address book. Where are the other staff? Mr. 𝘱𝘱 told you a story that was not true. He then broke in to help someone, but it was to steal a gun. He broke in twice. You can't trust a man's word. Memory doesn't work like a tape recorder that you could go rewind and hit play. None of these interviews were recorded. They all had a plan to get money. The government would ask again and again, are you sure there are no sexual abuse in New Mexico? Dr. Dubin was solid on what she did not have, that she did not have group sex, alleged. Counts 2 and 4 rely on Jane entirely. If you don't believe her, drop the counts. Count 6 relies on Carolyn. If you don't believe her, drop the count. Ghislaine is being tried here for being with Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe it's a bigger mistake of her life, but it's not a crime. Acquit her. Judge Nathan says, let's take a break. Shoo. All right. And I believe this is where they give a rebuttal, or maybe not. Let's see. This is Attorney USA. We want a curative instruction. Miss Manager read from an email that was precluded. Judge Nathan says the curative instruction you are asking for is in the charge. While Judge Nathan denied Inner City Press request for a public call in line, right now, Judge Richard Sullivan is holding an in-person criminal proceeding with a public call in line. Now, Attorney USA Comey has started her 35 minutes rebuttal. Inner City Press, which filed opposition to her letter withholding slides and demonstrates, is putting it in a new thread here. So let's go to the new thread. All right. So this is the rebuttal. Attorney USA, the prosecution team, the feds are now rebutting the defense argument. Now, Attorney USA Maureen Comey rebuttal summation with all slides and demonstrators withheld from the press and public. Inner City Press challenged. All right, going in. Attorney USA Comey going in for a rebuttal of the defense closing argument. And she begins. Ghislaine Maxwell touched 3 witness breasts. The defense tried to get you to look way through the massive amount of evidence. Miss Mo walked you through it this morning. All slides and demonstratives withheld from public and press. You saw it in the exhibit. Who needs that many massages? She was in the room. She knew. The $30 million is We Molested Kids Together money. People who prey on children do not leave behind documents. The defendant was not walking out of massage rooms and writing a memo. Today, I touched Jane's breasts. Look at the flight logs. Epstein flying to New Mexico, then leaving a year later with Miss Maxwell. Miss Manager was trying to mislead you. The defense's own expert Professor Loftus said, some things you never forget, moments that change in your life. Imagine you had to remember Thanksgiving from years ago. Turkey happens every time. Which would out more. How old were you when Mike Wallace's birthday? Or how old were you when the middle-aged man molested you? All the defense can argue is that she was 16 or 14. When I touched her breasts, it's still a crime. It's like the stuffing at Thanksgiving. There every time. Look at these photos. We can't. Carolyn named Maxwell as one of the 2 people who had set up the massages. She told Sean that she wouldn't pronounce the name. Continued on. There is not a shred of evidence that a group of lawyers got together and made up a story about Maxwell. The lawyers got their money before this trial started. Why would the ex-boyfriends come here and lie to you? And Alicia, the defense tried to dirty him up, but he admitted he stole. He has no reason to lie. I think they meant Alessi, not Alicia. If they wanted to frame Maxwell, they could have put a way deeper in. I'm sorry. The way that this is worded, it's just really strange. So that's why I'm stumbling a lot today. So I'm trying to correct the typos and the words as I go. If they wanted to frame Maxwell, they would have put way deeper in. No, they testified for justice. The defendant is guilty. Judge Nathan then presides. Thank you, Ms. Comey. I will now read the charge. Judge Nathan then says has reached page 50 of 83 in the charge. When Jane was under the age of 17, Maxwell participated with multiple group sexual encounters with Epstein and Jane. While reading out continues, we'll tweet into the thread the counts and penalties per SDNY. Count 1, conspiracy to entice a minor to travel to engage in illicit sex acts, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years. Count 2, enticing a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, which carries a maximum sentence of 5. Count 3, conspiracy to transport a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, which carries a maximum of 5. Transporting a minor with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity carries a maximum of 10. Count 5, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors, which carries a statutory maximum of 5 years in prison. And count 6, sex trafficking of minors, which carries a statutory maximum of 40 years in prison. Judge Nathan still reading the charge. Judge Nathan's charge readout almost over. It's 4:39. Unclear of how much deliberation could occur today. Jurors were asked to be prepared to stay until 6 p.m., but we'll see. Should find out soon. Judge Nathan continues, I'm sure if you listen to the views of your fellow jurors, give me a few minutes for a sidebar while you remain in the juror boxes. Everyone else remain quiet. Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting alone at the defense table. Judge Nathan opens up again. 5 alternate jurors can leave, but remain on call. They are jurors number 125, 149, 151, 152, and 170. The others can begin to deliberate. Ms. Williams will show you how to access the admitted exhibits. All rise. Judge Nathan says, we'll wait to hear back from the juror. I want to thank the 8 counsel. I learned a lot from you. Marshals take Maxwell out of the courtroom, but she'll be brought back in when the jurors come back in for any note they send. Update. Just now, 5:53 p.m., Judge Nathan summoned everyone and announced, and the jury went and sent a note. They wanted to leave at 5:30. She is bringing them in to give instructions. Maxwell is at the defense table and in the front row, Kevin and Leah Safian. All rise, just entering. Judge Nathan says, I just want to remind you to follow all my instructions. No consuming of any information about the case. Resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. straight to the jury room once all 12 are there. Just start up. We'll get your lunch order. Judge Nathan continues, keep an open mind until you are together deliberating. Jury leaves. Judge Nathan says, be ready for notes at 9 a.m. and concluded. Yeah. So with that being said, that was a lot. That was a lot of arguments. I don't know. I think the prosecution is definitely weak sauce. I think the defense also is weak sauce, but they don't need much. I don't know. This is spooky, and we're just going to have to see what the jury deliberates and if justice will prevail through divine intervention. I don't know. Again, I've given you guys my comments. This was exhaustive for the past 2 weeks, and there's not a lot of density to go off of, but this is what we're left with. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in and keeping up with the Ghislaine Maxwell trial with me. Thanks so much for your appreciation. There is a tip jar in the description below. Thank you so much for sharing my work. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell on the notifications, drop this link in a group chat, either on Discord, Telegram, Facebook groups, whatever it is. Thank you so much for your support. Once again, I will catch you guys in the next video.